Hey, it's Carrie again with another episode of Gardenside Chats out in my garden. Welcome. Today is Monday, so we're going to do another rendition of Ask an Urban Farmer. And we actually, I believe, only got one question related to vegetable gardening in the last week, so I'll answer that question. And then we'll just talk kind of a little bit about like a garden update. Talk about winterization because that's kind of like the thing happening right now. Okay, so the question that we got in the past week, so on Mondays, let me back up. On Mondays, we do a segment called Ask an Urban Farmer, and that's where we solicit questions, vegetable gardening related questions via social media over the course of a week. And then on Mondays, we answer the questions. So we got one question last week. And the question relates to how do you plant in your garden if you don't till the soil? So I talk a lot about no-till gardening. We do no-till production at the Veterans Urban Farm. We recommend that a lot of backyard gardeners do no-till. So the question is like, how do you do that if the ground is so hard it's like impossible to plant seeds in because the ground is so hard? Which is a fabulous question. So thank you to whoever asked that question. So no-till, the reason why we recommend doing no-till vegetable gardening and farming is because while in the short term, tillage, which is the kind of the mechanical action of like flipping and loosening the soil and like turning it upside down. So it's just like this little machine that like has tines that kind of go like this, and it flips the soil that's like 6 inches or so down up and puts it on top of the ground. And kind of that process, it kind of like breaks up clods and kind of loosens that that soil to however deep the like diameter of the tines of the tiller is. Hope that made sense. So while in the short term, tillage increases the oxygen in the soil, which causes like population booms of the bacteria and other microbes that live in the soil that plants need to grow big and healthy, and then you get nice big vegetable plants. So amongst other things is it infuses a bunch of oxygen into the ecosystem, so that relates to a huge increase in population numbers for certain microbes. It also, at the same time, kind of loosens that level or that area of the soil, however deep you're tilling. Usually tillage is only, less 6 inches or less. It's not super deep. So at the same time, you're creating a more, porous, looser, like soil environment for the plant's roots to kind of spread out in and do their thing. So in the short term, that's great. And if you do tillage like responsibly, and meaning like once a year, when the soil conditions are right, that's a great way to quickly get a soil bed prepared for planting either seeds or plants. Long term, what happens is it actually long term, kind of like the inverse actually becomes true. So while in the short term, tillage loosens up the soil and makes for a better, what we call tilth of the garden bed, which just refers to like the soil structure and how loose the particles are from each other and things like that. It actually creates longer term compaction, which is actually what you're trying to prevent with tillage. So what happens is like over time, tillers can only till, like I said, certain depths. And over time, you might be able to till 6 inches. But if you till a whole bunch, that tiller is going to hit that 6 inch mark over and over and over again. And it's going to compact the soil more down below. So roots grow way deeper than 6 inches. We're talking feet they go down in the soil. So they'll be nice and loose the first 6 inches and being great. And then they're going to hit like a wall. And, we'll still be able to penetrate that, you know, and break through probably, but it's gonna be harder and it's gonna slow down their growth because it will compact that. We call it a plow layer because it also happens with plowing. It hits the point where the tiller doesn't go anymore, and over time, running that tiller at that same depth causes that compaction lower in the soil. Okay. So that's something that happens with too much tillage, is it compacts the soil, and everything we're doing in gardening is trying to loosen and aerate the soil. Another thing that happens is when there's population bursts. Everyone in, you know, when they took biology or ecology in school, you learn that there's population bursts, and then that's usually followed by a population crash. So earlier I said that since tillage introduces oxygen into the soil, it creates a population boost of certain microbes that plants need. Well, when there's a boost, a short-term boost in a population that gobble up all the things they need to eat, and they're pooping and, I don't know, doing their thing, well, and then they run out of resources. That oxygen that was integrated with the tillage, you know, isn't continuously integrated because you're not tilling every single day, and there's only a finite amount of food unless you're continuously feeding them every day, and so the population crashes. And so kind of by the end of the day, you don't really, you haven't really helped anything. In the short term, it was great, but long term, you have this like kind of fluctuation. So with no-till, while it takes longer to plant everything, and it's just like a slower process to build like soil structure and tilth and all those things, it is a more steady, even keel, long-term way to grow your garden. And it actually mimics nature a lot better than tillage, because it's very rare that, you know, what happens in tillage happens in nature, like where the soil that's 6 inches below the surface of the ground is dug up and plopped on top of the ground and exposed to all that oxygen. So that was like I took a really meandering route to talk about why you might not, what tillage is and what tillage does. And that doesn't answer your question at all. I just wanted to give some background on like why there is this camp of tillage versus non-tillage. And don't get me wrong, you can till responsibly. We till at the Columbia's Agriculture Park. Sometimes your garden or your farm is so big that you have to till because you don't have enough human power to do it no-till. Or you have really, you know, tillage is a good tool. It's not inherently a bad thing. Please don't get me wrong. And tillage is oftentimes necessary. It can just be done right, and it can be done wrong. Oftentimes we recommend that backyard gardeners don't till because, one, most people don't have access to their own tiller, so you'd have to rent one or pay someone to till your backyard garden. And often a lot of the backyard gardeners that we work with operate in gardens that are small enough that you can totally do everything by hand and it's not a problem. Okay, so let's circle back around to the question. The question was, how do you plant in your soil if you don't till? So like I said, tillage loosens the soil, but no-till doesn't mean you don't dig or loosen the soil at all. It just means you don't till. So where's my tool? Pardon me. So this, let me, if I haven't already, introduce you to my favorite, well, I have a whole bunch of favorite tools, but this is one of my favorite tools. This is a potato fork. Voila. A lot of people think it's a pitchfork. Oh, look at that. It fits perfectly. It's not a pitchfork. Let's see. So pitchforks, I don't have one around here. Pitchforks, the tines are more like this. Does that make sense? And it's more for scooping like hay and like flinging hay, you know, like, and you can scoop with this. You can kind of use it as a shovel. But potato forks have flatter tines like this, and they also have like the tines are I don't know how you can see this. I don't know. Sorry. Rectangular. I don't know if you can tell, but trust me, they're rectangular, whereas pitchforks are kind of like rods. So potato fork is meant for digging and introducing oxygen into the soil like tillage does. Tillage is all about introducing oxygen into the soil, but This doesn't flip the soil levels over. This just makes holes vertically into the soil, and it still introduces oxygen while reducing some compaction, breaking up some clay clods and all that kind of thing. So let me maybe demonstrate. This might not, I'm going to move you down. This might, hopefully, maybe I'll just move you and then we'll come back. So this is, let's see. Can you see right? Okay. Can you see? So this is a garden bed that has had kale growing in it pretty much all season. So you can see there's some cracks in it. It's really dry. And you know, it's not like loose and cloddy at all. So this potato fork, I'm trying to figure out where you can see. Okay, I think you can see right there. So you just put your weight down on the potato fork and you kind of wiggle it back and forth. So you can kind of see that I'm lifting up some of the dirt or topsoil. My botany professor in college always got mad when you called topsoil dirt. So anyway, topsoil. And then you kind of just skewer the ground. You know, I usually do it every like 3 inches and kind of just do it, can you still see, in a line. I'm going to show you what it looks like when I'm done. And then I kind of do it in a crosshatch pattern. So I'm still loosening up the soil, loosening up the surface, loosening up the clods, but I'm not turning the soil over. I'm keeping the inherent like soil structure and soil level. So it definitely looks different than tillage when I'm done, but also loosens up the soil without messing up the layers. Okay, can you, I'm having a hard time seeing what you can see. Okay, can you see this? So, okay, so over here where I did not like use my potato fork, you can see I can't like stick my finger in the ground, it's just like hard. But over here, where I did just kind of skewer the potato fork a few times, I can now kind of dig my hand in just a little bit, you know, a few inches. And it's pretty dry, so the soil is pretty crumbly. And I can go back with my other most favorite tool in the world that I did not bring out here because I wasn't thinking, my Katuchi, but I do have this instead. This is a Maddox. It's like a tool that you don't have to have for gardening, but I have it anyway. So, I don't really want to talk about it, except that, you know, let's just talk about the hoe part of it. So if I wanted to, after using the potato fork, I can like skewer the kind of topsoil and kind of loosen it. And then if there's any clods, I could come back with like a hand hoe or like a larger hoe and kind of break up the clods kind of gently, you know. So, you know, I'm just kind of doing a little demonstration. Hopefully you can see well. And with those two, between those two tools, the potato fork, like going deeper and introducing oxygen deeper in the soil and breaking up compaction deeper, we're talking like 8 inches, and then coming back with like a little hand hoe or something to kind of break up the clods kind of superficially more within the couple inches range, I was able to, you know, loosen up the soil pretty easily. I mean, that took me like, a couple minutes, versus over here, like this is how it was a couple minutes ago. I can't do anything. So what I just did is all within the realm, I'm going to move you back, all within the realm of no-till gardening. So no-till is not no-dig at all. It's just you're not tilling and turning that soil structure over and on top of itself. So tools like a potato fork, or on a larger scale, something called a broad fork, those do not create longer term compaction like tillage does, because they're not like, tillers kind of have like a little like shoe, and the shoe is what causes long-term compaction. These just have like little points, so they don't cause long-term compaction. They just make vertical holes in the soil. And then you can use this to break up like deeper compaction, and then use like a little hoe, or in my case this like Matic, I don't know, to kind of break up those clods. So within a no-till system, that is how you can plant, you know, direct seeded things like well, I don't know. I mean, there's a whole world of direct seeded things, but without tilling. Also, a really important thing that I'm going to talk about later today, after I finally finish answering this question, is in no-till, mulch is a very, very, very important component. Mulch is like the key to everything in no-till. We're talking, I use straw? No. I use leaves in my garden. At the Veterans Urban Farm and at the Columbia Agriculture Park, we use a lot of straw because it's easier for us to access in larger quantities. But straw is really key in keeping the soil structure loose and friable. It keeps the soil moisture more consistent across the gardening season, and it keeps all the things that live in the soil happier because it cools them down in the summer and it warms them up in the winter, that kind of thing. The bed of kale did not have any mulch on it, which is one of the reasons why it was so dry. And, later in the garden chat, we can go to a bed that has been mulched for months and months and months, and we can compare how dry this garden bed is, because it's not mulched, with one that has been mulched with leaves for months, so you could see the difference, because there's a big difference. So, to be more succinct about it, you can still loosen the soil with handheld tools, because they don't do what tillage does, which is essentially just turn the soil upside down. And after you do that and your plants are coming up and they're doing well and they're getting bigger, add some mulch, because that is also the key component here. And that is how you plant things in a no-till system. You probably weren't expecting such a long-winded response, so I hope that you made it through that. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. It was a really, really good question. I had a lot to say about it. Obviously, I have a lot of feelings about, keeping your soil healthy, because at the end of the day, as a gardener, that's like what we're here for, is to preserve and in some cases improve our urban soils to, produce these like really vibrant, healthy ecosystems that also produce food for us. Also, one last thing on no-till is it's a slow thing. I often liken gardening in general to like slow cookers, because there's no instant gratification in gardening, except maybe if you're planting a plant and then you're like, oh, I got the plant in the ground. But other than that, it's a long-term game. So your first season as a no-till gardener is going to be a lot rougher than your fifth season, just to be, just throw that blanket statement out there. Because these, like, the roots from every plant you grow throughout the seasons will break up the compaction a little deeper. You potato forking a few times throughout the season for seasons on end continues to break up the compaction. You adding bags and bags and bags of leaves over the course of years that decompose slowly into those holes that are made by the potato fork and eaten by worms and then pooped out and then taken up by plants. All of that takes a long time to create this really like loose, soft, great soil environment to grow your plants in. So it's not like a one and done thing. It's a process that you just kind of live by as a gardener every season, and it does get better. It just takes some time. Okay, and that's all I have to say about no-till gardening. Okay, if you have any questions about gardening, we are pretty knowledgeable about vegetables. Sometimes people ask us about flowers and we don't know. I mostly do these. I don't know a ton about flowers, so I might not be able to answer flower questions. But please, if you have any questions, please send it to us via Facebook or Instagram, or email to us, and we'll answer these on Mondays. Okay, so if we may, let's switch gears. Oh, big stretch. My kitty's coming. Hello. Let's switch gears just to kind of a garden update, because a really big thing happened for my garden last week, which was I had the first killing frost. I am in Columbia, but my garden is quite big and not really near immediately any roads, so my garden is a little bit cooler than some of the gardens we work at, at Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture, most notably the Veterans Urban Farm and Columbia's Agriculture Park, which didn't experience a straight up killing frost like I did. So anyway, I was ready for it. I'm usually always ready for it by this time of year because I still have a fall garden and stuff is doing really well. But my peppers, my tomatoes, my cucumbers, my squash, my basil, other stuff, all that tender stuff died. And so now we're talking kale, pretty much kale and spinach. We'll plant some garlic on the 30th with a workshop that we'll do. So right now I'm doing a lot of winterizing. And I just want to do a short, like little blurby on winterizing and also what I'm doing for season extension. So let's go. Okay. Oh, watch out, lava. So I've got a big garden. I don't till. What do? My garden's really old. My garden's 20 years old. So it's already, it's been around for decades. So already quite loose in general. So my role with my garden is to pretty much just keep feeding the soil. Like I'm just dumping things on the soil for the things that live in the soil to eat it. So one of the things I like to use a lot is cardboard. I got a personal favorite cardboard dumpster in Columbia that I hit up. And I get the cardboard from the dumpster and I like to try to pull the tape off just because the cardboard will decompose into the soil, but the tape stays as trash. So I try to do that as best I can. Depending on my mood, I'm not like super great at it, but I always find it later, or I feel like I always find it later when I'm like planting stuff or harvesting from that same bed because it will just stay there. But anyway, that's what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling off the tape of the box. I'm going to throw that away. So I'm almost done. Bear with me. And then what do I use the cardboard for? Well, I use it for, one of the reasons why people like to till is to suppress weeds. And it is true that no-till gardening can lead to an increase over time in perennial weeds, but that's just if you don't keep up with it. I don't mind weeding. I listen to podcasts and then I just go out on Saturday and weed. But I realize that might not be everyone's jam. So anyway, I pulled all the tape off this box. I'm going to use this box to smother cool season weeds. So right now in this bed that I'm working on, I've got some mustard greens that are volunteers, but in this case I'm going to consider them weeds because I don't really want a whole bunch of mustard greens to contend with next spring when I plant this bed with my spring stuff. I've got henbit. I've got some creeping Charlie, which is unfortunate, and I've also got dock, which I'm just gonna straight up dig out right now because it's not gonna die. Some things don't die with cardboard. The mustard greens will die, the henbit will die, the creeping Charlie won't necessarily die. This is creeping Charlie. It smells weird. I don't know what it smells like, but it doesn't smell good. And it'll just take over. Not good. And then I'm going to dig up the dock. Creeping Charlie is harder to dig up, so I'm not even going to bother. But the dock will be easy, and I realize you can't see that right now, but I'll show you in a second when I dig it up. So I got my potato fork out because it's my favorite, and I just kind of skewered the ground next to the dock. And I got the dock. I got all of it, pretty much. So this is dock. You can't pull it because this is a baby, and the taproot's already like a foot long, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which is great for deep compaction relief, but also just sets a million seeds, and it's a whole thing. So anyway, I'm gonna dig out the couple perennial weeds that I've got just to try to keep them maintained. Ooh, a worm. Ooh, lots of worms. Well, 2 worms. See, those are the little guys I'm trying to keep by my no-till gardening. Ooh, there's some that are sleeping. Anyway. It's kind of dry, so they kind of start to hibernate, and it's also cool, as you probably know. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to move this. That's my helper. He's helping. So I'm going to use my little Maddox just to kind of break up some clods. I'm not going to do a whole lot of work because I'm going to come back in March or whenever I'm going to plant this bed and do more. So I'm just kind of trying to make it even. If I had a rake out here, I'd rake it, but this is all I'm going to do right now for this little spot that I'm demonstrating. pull my fork away. Okay. And then I laid down this cardboard. So this, I'm not even going to undo the box. The box is still together. I'm just going to like put that box like so it's got two levels on top of the ground. And I'm just going to do this section just as a little demo so I don't like go way too long here. So then, if you wanted to, you could put finished compost, any manure like goat or rabbit or horse or whatever manure down and kind of work it in with your potato fork or your hoe and then put the cardboard over it. I'm not necessarily going to do that just because I don't have it accessible with me right now, so I'm just going to skip that step. But if you did want to do that, fall is a great time to add manure or compost because it kind of works in over the year. But yeah, do it on top of the ground, put your cardboard on top of that. Lava likes to dig under things. So like I've said before, in my garden I use leaves. So I've got this little like partial bag of leaves. So then you put your straw, or I'm sorry, your mulch on top of the cardboard. I'm going to bring it back up. Can we do both? Okay, you can see me too. So here's the thing I always talk to people about. How deep do you apply mulch? So we're talking like inches, we're talking like deep. So you don't want to see any of the cardboard box. You definitely don't want to see any of the ground, which brings me back to a point, like if you have multiple cardboard boxes, you want to, instead of having them be like this, you want to have them like overlapped a little bit. And then you want to put like several inches of straw or leaves over that box. Why so big? Well, it's windy. They're going to blow away. Squirrels are going to come and bury something in it, and it's going to like spread them all over the place. They're also going to decompose, and as anything decomposes, it gets smaller. So you want to buy yourself some time so that like in a month or two when it started to decompose, you already aren't just exposing your soil or your cardboard box. And so this is an important component of winterization because the things that live in the soil that are beneficial and like necessary for your vegetable plants to thrive, they don't like exposed soil. So if you think about like any sort of natural ecosystem, soil is very rarely on large expanses just exposed to the elements. So most things have evolved to need some sort of like cover to the soil. So that's what this mulch and this cardboard are also doing, other than just like smothering weeds. It's like being a nice blanket for your soil. And like I said earlier, if you were listening earlier, like at the end of the day, as a gardener, that's all you're trying to do is be good to your soil, because everything kind of falls from that. So I would put way more leaves on this one area. So I'm going to get another bag and do this. So like I said, at work we use a lot of straw because it is more accessible. But leaves are free, and if you're willing to put like the work collecting them in, they're nice too. Okay. So since I'm just doing this as a demonstration, I'm not going to like go all out. But this is kind of the depth I'm talking about. So how can I show you? Let me try to, sorry. Give me a, sorry. So I'm trying to show, what am I trying to show you? I'm trying to show you how deep can you see? So, okay, here. So this is my hand, and it's going, so it's as tall as my hand is. So that's about 5-6 inches. So that's how deep the mulch is in this area. So mulching your garden, it doesn't have to be with leaves. Straw is very common. You can buy straw on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Make sure it's herbicide free. That's important. Like I said, leaves, it's free. You just have to collect them. Okay, so that's kind of key to winterizing. Cover your soil, some sort of mulch. Boom, done. What else is key to winterizing? Well, let's travel across the garden. And I'm going to turn you around so you're not looking at me or my chicken coop. But how do I do that? Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're going to continue onward. So I'm going to make a little detour. Before we leave, let's look at this. This is my kale. So let's look at this soil that has not been mulched for months and like see how hard it is. Like, I don't know if you can hear that or the chickens behind me, but it's pretty rock hard. So we're going to go over and stop by my dead tomatoes and peppers. Okay, so these are my peppers, these are my tomatoes. They died on Thursday night. I was ready. They're okay. They really like to be heavily mulched for disease reasons. So, but also I just love to mulch things. So you can kind of see me scraping the leaves back. I reapplied leaves multiple times over the growing season because they would continuously kind of get eaten by the things that live in the soil and decomposed. So look how loose that is. So that also is a testament to no-till agriculture. I didn't till this bed. I just used a potato fork and a hoe to plant. So this also like obviously shows like the benefit of mulch to garden soil. Like it's darker partially because it's a little damper. It's not wet by any means because it's been so dry. But it's like so much looser. And that really only is because I just continuously put leaves on this bed. I probably did it like 3 or 4 times. So, very important. Okay, but let's talk about what do you do with plants like this after they die? Well, honestly, I just cut them out. I didn't bring my pruners with me, but for these tomatoes, I would just take my pruners and bring them through here and boop, right there. And I'd pull the plant out, and I have a rather large garden, so I just have this back area that I would just throw the plants in. We're going to talk about this more on the, I'm going to bring you back around so you're not just looking at dead plants, on this Friday's workshop about winterizing garden for like insect habitat. But keeping some like above ground plant growth, even if it's dead vegetable plants that aren't pretty anymore, is really important because they do serve as good overwintering sites to insects, beneficial insects and not beneficial insects. But the more plant diversity you have, the more insect diversity you have, and the stronger your kind of like garden's ecosystem is. So while I will pull these tomato plants out, I probably won't pull 100% of my summer plants out. Like I have some volunteer cucumbers over here I might leave on the trellis all winter. So I'm going to turn you back around to show you some things that didn't die, some things that are thriving, and then some things that died. They're kind of all right next to each other. Okay, so going right to left, I've got Swiss chard, which is not a very cold hardy green. As you can see, the leaves are like really, especially that one like dark purple one on the left is like really struggling. And then I have Toscano or Dino or Lacinato kale, whatever you call it, is a very cold hardy kale. And it has been decimated by these caterpillars, which I just let go because I like birds and they're food for the birds. But now those caterpillars have kind of like moved on or died, or I'm not totally sure how they overwinter. But the kale is doing quite well and will do so probably until December, depending on how our weather patterns go. And then of course that's another view of my tomatoes, which are just dead. So definitely this time of year is definitely like time for greens. I've got some dead flowers, some dead cucumbers, but my carrots are beautiful. It's a really shocking time because everything that's dead is like brown and black, and then everything that's alive is still green and vibrant. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of nice, a unique experience. So this is my season extension section of my garden. I hope you can see it. So on the right, I have spinach that I planted in, when did I plant that? Probably in late September. It's doing quite well. I did the first harvest last night. And then I have 2 types of kale, kind of a curly winter kale and then some more dino kale on the left that was planted in August. And I did my second harvest of that yesterday. And then in kind of these like what we call urbanite, which is just broken up concrete and bricks, I have scallions that I treat as a perennial in my garden, and they'll overwinter just fine. So I want to talk about these. I'm going to, turn you around because I think my selfie camera is better than my other camera. So I wanted to show you some things that are important. So I want the camera to look good. Okay, so I have my overwintered garden beds have this frame, and so I did that this summer. And then to the frame, I got 10-foot pieces of 1-inch PVC. Okay, the beds are about 2 feet wide or so. They're actually 30 inches wide, so a little more than 2 feet. So I ended up cutting the 10-foot sections down to 8 feet, but you can only buy them in 10-foot sections, so really cheap anyway, so it doesn't matter. Lava. My cat just walked across my greens. So I cut them down to 8 feet. I screwed them with 2 screws per side onto, can you see? It doesn't matter. You can come up with it. I screwed them onto the inside of the frame of the raised bed. And then I did 1, 2, 3, 4 per bed, and the beds are 10 feet long. So it's not like exactly the same in between each section of PVC, but it's the PVC pipes are close enough to strongly support the plastic that I have to go over them. So the 8-foot sections of PVC have kind of made it the arch to be about 3 or so feet high, which I thought was a good height, because if it's too low, it's going to require me to come out and vent it a whole lot, because it'll get hot really fast. Even on a day that's like 25 degrees, if it's beautiful and sunny out, the plastic will catch all that solar energy, and it'll just get really hot really fast. So something a little bit taller, but not so tall that it's like floppy and like blowing in the breeze and stuff, is more ideal for me, because I don't want to have to come out every day and vent it. So I thought 3 feet, that's probably good. Like, it's just larger, it's going to be slower to get hot, and the things that we're growing in these are cool season plants. They don't like to be hot. They actually more enjoy this kind of weather that we're experiencing right now than like 90 degrees. So you want it kind of tall. So now I have this greenhouse plastic that you can purchase online, and it's important to get greenhouse plastic. This is greenhouse plastic. It's 5mm greenhouse plastic, and you can get custom sizes cut and shipped to you, which is probably a good idea if you're willing to spend the money, because then it's like the exact dimensions that you need. And we have had this is actually used from work that we weren't using anymore, but we got this in 2015, and there's no like, it has not photodegraded. I'm poking at it because if it's been photodegraded, my finger would just poke through. So it's really good quality. So it's a little more expensive than like that plastic drop cloth and stuff that you get at like Westlakes and stuff, but it lasts way longer, and it's an important thing. So I have plastic because that's what I have, but you can also get floating row cover or remay. Those are trade names for like kind of like a white fabric that's pretty strong, and that you can cover your plants with. The good thing about that is it lets air out, so it doesn't get so hot that like the plastic does. You don't have to vent it. When it's really windy, the wind will blow through instead of blowing it off like this plastic will. It won't keep it as warm as the plastic will, but you can get warmer rated remay so that it's like 8 degrees warmer under the cloth than outside. So that's also a good investment. Again, both of those things can be purchased online. Just Google them. I don't think there's any place in town that sells that kind of like very specific greenhouse or farming like materials. So all I have the plastic off right now because, like I said, this is cold loving things, so they're fine right now. I actually just put it on Thursday night because I know my garden, and I knew that if it was going to get down just to frost, it might not kill anything at the Veterans Urban Farm, but I knew my garden was a little colder. My microclimate's a little bit colder, so I knew it would hit here. And while my plants would live through it, it was like 85 a couple days before, and that's still shocking to plants. That like temperature change is still shocking to plants, even that like do well with cooler temperatures. So I just wanted to keep them nice and snug. I probably won't put this back on until the temps drop down, again into the low 30s, which I don't know when that's going to be. But until then, I'm just leaving it kind of in the middle of the two hoops, weighted down. And then when I decide to put it back up, I just have these bricks and these pieces of wood kind of around, every couple feet around the outside of the beds. And then I, bring the cover back over and weight it back down. And I'll do that all winter long. This stuff should get me through until early spring, and then at which time they'll both start to flower, which I will let them do because I have a giant garden and I don't need that space next spring. And then the bumblebees especially will love the kale. I don't think they love the spinach flowers so much, but they love brassica flowers. So I'm excited about, that iteration of their life cycle. Yeah. So that's kind of in a nutshell, but maybe not so much of a nutshell, what I'm doing in my garden at this time of year. Keeping a couple things alive by keeping, in the case of the dino kale that I've been growing since like April, not covering it, but it's a little hardier, and I got a whole bed of it right here, so I don't care if that goes. And then pulling some plants out, and then heavily mulching is kind of the name of the game for the next several weeks, at least, until I finish that. And then it gets on to designing your garden for the next season. So, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to support you and your gardening hobby. That's what we're here for. If you have any questions, please share them with our Facebook or Instagram page, and we'll answer them next Monday. And then we'll continue this winterization conversation through the lens of like insect populations and environments on Friday at 5 with our workshop on Friday. And in the meantime, take care, and thanks for watching. Bye.